In order, it is 7 p.m. on May 26, 2020. Not quite organized. There we go. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good, thank you. We'll begin as we always do with public input on matters that are not on the agenda. Do I have anything? You can raise your hand electronically, or I don't see any. Why is that not working? All right, I don't see anything. Chairman's comments, two things. First of all, I'd very much like to thank everyone who participated in and put together the Veterans Day ceremony that we had yesterday, the abbreviated ceremony, especially Colonel Martha Monroe, Tom Zaborski, and the rest of the Veterans Graves Committee. Our own Selectman Tom Ryan, who read part of the list of the honored dead. And I watched, it's on YouTube right now. If you didn't see it on Memorial Day, the videography, I'm no expert, but the videography is really, really terrific. I believe it was Martha's son, Noah, who did a lot of it. And Stow TV obviously helped out tremendously, but it's very, very good. It's about 25 minutes long. It's really worth watching. Very professionally done, I thought. And I want to take a moment to remember Paul McLaughlin, who died recently. We got word that he died just after our last selectmen's meeting. Paul, a longtime resident of town, on the finance committee up to the time of his death. A really terrific guy, a smart guy. Had a really terrific business career and then devoted a lot of his energy to the town. I think a lot of you might remember, even those who were big proponents of Minuteman Vogue might remember his presentation several years ago where he went through the finances, and it was just so well done and so professional. But I'll always remember Paul from the Building Oversight Committee, and I think the town administrator will as well. He was a critic of how much we were planning to spend on some of these buildings, in particular the fire station. He did his homework. He went around to other towns, visiting other fire stations, seeing what they had done. But then when Paul got convinced that the approach that the town was taking was reasonable and worthwhile, he became a stalwart advocate. He was on the oversight, he was on the building committee. And I was always, I think many of us were impressed by how what mattered to Paul was the merits of the question. And once he's got himself satisfied that it was a good idea, he was going to work for it. But if he thought it was a bad idea, he was going to work against it. And I will say that it was better to have him working with you than it was to have him working against you. And I say that out of respect. So if we could just, do you want to add anything to that, Bill?
No, I concur wholeheartedly. And Paul, first of all, showed a huge amount of interest in matters that many people don't. And the fact of the matter is he was committed to following through on everything that he said to me. And we had many, many meetings. And I was, when he said to me that he'd be willing to assist through this project, and I told him that as chair of the oversight committee, I'd love to have him get involved, and he did. And he was a great asset, man of detail, focus. And so, and it was all for the good. And as you said, he became a proponent instead of an opponent.
And he worked hard.
And he worked hard and got up at town meeting and supported when I think he was wholly committed to not supporting at town meeting, which means he was an honest, he gave an honest appraisal of it, and he was persuaded or dissuaded, depending on where his stop point was. But in the end, he was there on that side, and you'd rather have him on your side advocating than the other.
Yeah, he will be missed. And if we could all just take a moment to remember Paul McLaughlin. Okay, thank you. We will proceed to the minutes of our meeting of May 12th. Thank you, Maureen. Have members of the board had a chance to review the minutes of May 12th? I'm seeing a nod from Courtney. I'm going to assume I'm getting a yes from Tom and Brian.
Yep.
No.
Nope. You need a second, Brian?
I'll give you a second, but then I have an amendment.
Okay. I gave Maureen a couple of very small amendments. I don't think Martha Monroe is retired. So we're going to double check that. And I changed the name of the facilities department to the building department. I think is technically correct. Is that right, Doug? Correct? I didn't recognize you with the mascot. This actually works.
We're actually both. Yeah.
Oh, you're actually both? Okay.
Yeah, whatever you use.
So that's fine. Other comments, Mr. Burke, you said you have something?
On the liaison reports, second page, first paragraph. I don't think I said that all those meetings that I was attending via Zoom were recorded. I think I did say that the Finance Committee's public forum the following night would be recorded, or it might have been that I said that the previous meeting where they discussed the SMOT proposal was recorded. So I'll accept that amendment.
How
But,
about if we just change that to, and many are recorded and available via Zoom?
If my colleagues do not consider that to be a gloss on what I said, that's fine. But the Finance Committee public hearing on the 2020 town warrant the following night, I did say it was going to be recorded, and that was recorded.
Okay, so we're going to change that to many are recorded and available. Any other amendments? Mr. Ryan, you always have some.
Nope. I caught the same one you did as far as I believe that Martha Monroe is actually a serving officer.
That's what I thought. Courtney, Ms. Frazier, anything? Oh, I think you're on mute, Courtney.
I have a note which may not be intelligible to myself, so that may not help. Under the annual town meeting warrant articles, the second paragraph there, line 3, it said, there's a phrase applicants, I'm suggesting applicants may already be in that sentence, if you can see that.
Say where it is again, please.
So, under annual town meeting warrant articles,
Yep. Third paragraph.
the second paragraph there, the third line,
Oh, okay.
there's a sentence in which it says applicants, I don't know what the other adverb is, but I would like it to read applicants may already be rather than what it says.
It says must, so we'll change that to may. And Mr. Burke has his many. All right, so I have all the comments. Anything else?
I move we accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the minutes of May 12 as amended. Further discussion? Seeing, hearing none. All those, I got to do a roll call. All those in favor, Ms. Frazier,
Aye.
Mr. Burke,
Aye.
Mr. Ryan.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Maureen, for your convenience, I think I have everything. I can give it to you later. All right, so now we get to arguably the most important thing on our agenda, which is a meeting with members of the Town Administrator's Screening Committee and the revelation, unveiling of the finalist names. And we have with us the chair, Ross Perry, also Nikki McGackie and Allison Toole. Do we have any other members of the, Karen Meyer, I see you. And I think that's it. Mr. Perry, how are you? Are you speaking for the committee?
Yeah, until one tells me I'm wrong, and then they can speak. And thank you for introducing the committee. It's been a committee that was jointly appointed by the moderator and the select board. We actually got along very well. The meeting was productive. I want to thank all of them for their hard work because everybody chipped in. We've been meeting since February 20th. We started off with 2 input forums that were open to residents, town hall staff, other employees, and board and committee members. And this was a chance for them to sort of focus group style to say what they liked and what they wanted in the next town administrator. I think the criteria was ones that we would have been thinking of on our own, but it was really good to hear from the people, board and committee members, employees, residents. They wanted an HR sensitivity and focus. They wanted somebody who's good at finance and budgets, somebody with managerial experience, somebody familiar with mass municipal processes, all the MGLs, mass procurement. We all know that's a lot of fun in Massachusetts. Contracting, union negotiations, someone who can be visible to the public, somebody who had good time management. I think some people realize that the job can take every hour of the day and then some, so we need someone with good time management. Someone who can serve as a coach for the Board of Selectmen as well as for employees. Communication skills, the right temperament, curiosity, and approachable. So these were sort of the framework that the search committee put together. We did not look at the applications until we had a chance to come up to, summarize these criteria. And there are 30 of them. So we got a very good turnout from the ads that were placed. But our first meetings, we started to narrow them down to 8 potential candidates based upon the selection criteria that I talked about. And all of the candidates were notified, one, that they received. We received their applications, and as we progressed, they were notified of the status. So I want to thank Maureen and Phoebe. They were instrumental in carrying out the legwork of this and making this happen for all of us. But they kept the candidates up to date so they knew where they're standing in this. We interviewed 8 candidates with a standard set of questions so that we could try to have an equal comparison amongst them all. And then to assist us in our recommendations to your board, we did reference checks on the top 4. And we talked to people that are on their reference lists that you would expect to be positive. And then we also reached out to department heads and anyone else that we thought, that we might know through our own separate backgrounds. We did social media searches, Google searches, and one member went out and actually looked at the videotapings or the YouTube recordings of various times these people had spoken at select board meetings.
Great.
And I think we got to see their sort of as much of their true colors as you possibly can with this type of search. All the references and all of our searches were extremely positive on all 4 members. We were looking for the so-called skeletons or hidden guns, anything smoking guns. And we're really pleased to say that all 4 people had very good reviews. So per the charter, we're pleased to provide you tonight with 4 names. Kelly Hebert, who's the former Topsfield town administrator, where she'd been there for 6 years. She now lives in Lowell. Kate Hodges has served 5 years as Concord's deputy town manager, and she also did a stint as the interim town manager, and she lives in Stow. Denise Demboski, 6 years as a town administrator in Groveland, living in Billrica. And Tom Garino, 14 years as Bourne's former town administrator. He lives in Vernon, Vermont. The town administrative search committee is unanimously confident that any one of the 4 candidates can do a good job for Stowe as the next town administrator. And we submit this list to you as from our committee.
And are these in ranked order?
Yes and no. We were unanimous on the 1st and 4th position, and we were essentially tied with a split vote for the 2nd and 3rd. So you could count them 2nd and 3rd as both the middle people.
Great.
But I think any one of the 4 would do a good job here.
And Ross, you gave me a little more color commentary in a conversation on the phone. And let's, for the benefit of Anne, who might want some background numbers, we had about 30 applicants total.
30 applicants, one that had withdrawn before we started the interviews. As of last week, all 4 of these are still in the game, in it to win it, so to speak. And they know that they're now the finalists and will be announced tonight.
Okay, good. That was my
When we did the reference checks, I had them sign a release allowing us to do the reference check. I gave them the opportunity of telling us whom not to talk to, in case there was some sensitivities
right
there. But we told them that we'd be talking to people on the reference list as well as others that we could find. I know Allison talked to all the COA directors. And I talked to some police and fire chiefs. A few other selectmen that I know from other rounds. They know. And Karen and Nikki all. List of people I talked to.
Somebody who's typing would like to go on mute, I think.
That's probably me.
There you go.
All right.
You should have known it was you, Ann.
I know. I've been told I hit my keys heavy.
Yeah, you do kind of pound them, but we'll talk about that later. Thank you. May I ask the other committee members for their...
Absolutely.
Allison, anything you want to add?
Oh, it's just an incredible experience, and I was very impressed with the credentials of the candidates were available. I'm really excited about the top 4. And I agree, I think any of them would do a fantastic job. It'd be great, they're all very well-rounded, have lots of experience in all different areas. I made charts, Excel spreadsheets, with negotiating, all different categories, and it was unbelievable with all 8. And to see the top 4 just hit every possible.
That is very encouraging. Sounds like we can't make a mistake,
Yeah.
which is very good. Nikki, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Allison just said. I was impressed with the credentials of all of our final candidates. And I think something great that came out of all of this was the chance for us to talk to all of the Stowe employees and the committee members and get a feel for what they were really looking for in the next town administrator. And the thing we heard over and over again was how great Stowe's people are, the people who work for the town of Stowe. And so I think the next town administrator is going to inherit a great crew.
I looked at the notes from your 2 public sessions. I was at one, but then I looked at the notes for both of them, and there was kind of a consistent story in what people were looking for. I mean, not perfect, but it seemed like you got some good, consistent feedback.
Yeah, people were really looking for someone who was, a good communicator, a good listener, obviously good budgeting and fiscal abilities. And I think that all 4 of our candidates can fulfill those.
Karen, do you want to add anything?
No, I'm good. I think my co-committee members spoke very well, and I think that you all are going to have a tough choice.
Yeah. Questions?
That's a good thing.
Questions
That's a very good thing.
Questions from members of the board. In a moment, we'll talk a bit more about process and how we're going to go about this and stuff like that. But questions for members of the screening committee?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you. First, as predicted and as expected, the screening committee did a superb job. We're very grateful for their hard work, especially under more difficult circumstances than we could have imagined when we appointed them back in December, I believe. So we're all very grateful for the list of finalists that they've presented. My one question is, did the screening committee ever mention, and I'm not saying that we should do this, I'm just asking, whether or not the finalists would be subject to a criminal background check? Not a Corey check, but an internet check.
So I think I spoke to town administrator Ann Ross about this. No, they didn't do either Corey or criminal background checks, but I was going to ask the town administrator if we could do a Corey check. Maureen's nodding, she has Corey access. And then I did want to take up the idea of some sort of internet kind of criminal background check. Is that something we can do, Bill, before we do the interviews?
It's doable,
It's doable?
technically.
Okay. Can I get and do we have the money? I assume it's a few $100s.
You'd have to get a pricing on it, and Maureen manages your budget, so.
Do I have a sense of the board? Well, how am I going to do this? What do other board members think about spending some money? Let's say it's up to $1,000 to do a reliable internet criminal background search. I'll give you my own personal opinion. Normally, I wouldn't think it was really necessary, but considering what the town just went through, I'm fine with it. I think it's money well spent. What do other board members think? Ms. Frasia. I think you're on mute, Courtney.
I agree with you. I think it sounds harsh, and typically I would not feel the need for this, but I think it feels more like part of our due diligence right now.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Mr. Ryan, what do you think?
One thing, I suppose, that, I'm in favor of doing it, but probably only after we have selected our finalists, shall we say. I don't think we need to do it on all 4 of them up front. We pick a finalist, and then we ask them for permission to do that, subject to, we make them an offer subject to them coming back clean.
Can I modify that, Tom? How about we do Corey on all 4? It's not public record, but criminal records. And then we wait on the other more complicated until we pick a final.
As far as a Corey check, I don't have any problem with that. We should probably do it before we interview them.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Right.
But as far as, I'll say doing a deep dive on them, if we're going to spend some money, it should probably be, the one that we've selected, and, we tell them that this is what we're going to do. And I believe that the police may actually be able to do, I'll call it a nationwide search, but we probably have to confirm that.
I'm not sure about that, but all right, let me move on.
Mr. Chair?
Burke. Yes, Mr. Burke.
Just some thoughts following up my colleague's comments. The Corey check will only provide criminal records from Massachusetts. I've done some research. I think I've supplied the town administrator and the chair and by the way, let me just say that when you're hiring a top-level executive, Corey checks, criminal background checks are not unusual. Right. But having said that, we can engage a firm that would give us a complete background check as far as criminal records, also any liens pending against any of these 4 finalists, and that can be done in a matter of a week. And it can be done as long as we're not looking for the background information, it can be done for about $250. This is just a ballpark, $250 per the 4 candidates. I kind of like the idea of having them before we interview these 4 finalists.
So, Mr. Burke, I'm just trying to speed this along, Brian. So, Mr. Burke is agreeing with Ms. Frecia and Mr. Ryan about Corey before the interviews, but he is putting forward the idea of this, as he says, deeper dive before the interviews. He is volunteering, or at least I'm hearing him volunteer to work with Maureen to get this done. I'm okay with that. Tom, you seem like you'd be reluctant to do that.
Not necessarily reluctant. I just don't like spending money on somebody that I might not hire.
Yeah, but $250. My concern is if we're not going to hire them, I don't necessarily want to know their liens and stuff like that. So I'm actually, now that I think about it, I think I'm more in favor of waiting until we've made a selection. Is anybody with me on that?
Are we going to have Corey checks before the interviews?
Yeah, everybody seems to be good with that.
Yep. I would support your proposal that we do it after. And one of the things when we call them in, we can tell them that we're going to do this.
I think we should do that.
I think we absolutely have to. And if they've got something to hide, then maybe they're going to withdraw.
Ms. Frecia, I haven't heard from you in a little bit. Are you okay with this? Corey check before the interview, deeper dive when we have a finalist?
I'm fine with that.
All right, and the town administrator wanted to add something.
That's what I would support. I think this, on a cost benefit, there's a risk when you've got 4, none of them knowing whether they would be the chosen one. And just the mention of that kind of thing, even if you didn't have something substantive, might persuade you, especially if you're being considered in other communities or you're thinking about it. I think it's an unnecessary risk. When you get to the finalist,
yes,
I wouldn't disagree there.
So let me get back to Selectmen. Any questions for the screening committee? And I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I'm going to be marching everybody through this meeting a little bit. I don't mean to be rude, but if anybody looks at the agenda I got here, I think it's kind of self-explanatory why I'm doing that.
I understand, Mr. Chair. I just would suggest that we notify the 4 finalists that we're going to be doing a Corey check on them.
Okay, that's fine.
I think we actually have to get their permission, don't we? The town has a form.
Some people do and some people don't, but I think it's a good idea to inform them, and I bet that they're expecting a Corey check. Let other selectmen with questions for the screening committee, only Mr. Burke. Mr. Ryan, any questions for the screening committee?
No questions, just good job. I've gone through the packets that we were provided, and I was impressed with the quality, so thank you very much, guys.
Ms. Frecia.
I'll echo Tom's comments. I'm very grateful for your efforts, and I'm likewise impressed with the finalists and thankful for your efforts.
So I just want to echo all of that. And I got to say, you guys, I think some of you didn't know each other very well. And from the first public hearing that I went to, you clearly were working very well together. I'm very impressed by what you did. The results seem to speak for themselves. I mean, you've got people with some experience here, and we did it all without a consultant. I'm crossing my fingers, but from the towns I spoke to, it was a little unusual. It's about 50-50 maybe out there about who uses a consultant, who doesn't. And it looks to me like you guys did a professional job, comparable to what any consultant would have done. So I'm very impressed, very, very appreciative. I'm going to suggest to the board that we not discharge you tonight, because just in case everything goes south, we're going to need your help redoing this on it really quickly. And I think you have you worked fast, so I think you have almost 2 months left in your official charter. But I do want to express our appreciation for everything you
Thank
did.
you. As I said, it was a great committee. Everybody worked really hard. We were going to have a meeting this Thursday, so finish up our meeting minutes and decide which executive sessions to be released.
Right.
Other than that, I assume there's nothing else you need us to do unless something blows up, as you said?
Yeah, other than that, I don't think there is. You gave us your list of questions, or at least you gave it to me, and we have the feedback from your public fora. I mean, I'd appreciate if you would be available if there's anything else we need. I would ask you to kind of stay here right now while we discuss the process going forward. I would appreciate your input. But other than that, I think that's a plan.
I just want to add that I think all 4 of the candidates have done the research on Stow.
Okay.
And we're very impressed with the work that Bill has been doing in the financial management. A lot of them mentioned Bill's work. And the committee struggled because it's a challenge to find someone who can fill his shoes. Bill has done such a fantastic job with Stow, and we were looking for another superhero to step in and continue. And I think we've got some good candidates, but everybody all along was very much appreciative, Bill, of everything you've done, and
Appreciate
setting the process for Stow to go forward. But
those are nice words to hear from another town administrator. For anybody who doesn't know, Ross is town administrator in Sterling. And he's right. These are going to be big shoes to fill.
I think in part we should be thankful that the town of Stow is a destination for what I saw from that list, even beyond the ones that you shortlisted. Some qualified folks that are in different professions, but all professionals. And so I think that speaks to the management team here, all the constituents, what you hear about Stow, and I think for those who did the background check talking to people, I think it supported that notion, and I think in large measure it's our community that helped promote itself. So our governing culture, for lack of a better term, I think.
you know, one that you've been instrumental in shaping for 20 years ago. So,
Well, we've had a good run together, I think.
Well, this isn't his going away party, not yet.
no, we'll
So
save the roasting for later.
the members of the board, let's discuss our next steps, because what this means is that the ball is squarely in our court right now. So Courtney and I have spent a little bit of time talking to folks in other towns, neighboring towns that have recently selected a town administrator. I don't know if Courtney had a chance to talk to anybody. I spoke to either selectmen, town administrators, or people in the selectman's office in Maynard, Acton, Boxborough, and Sterling. Sterling was easy. And there's a remarkably consistent picture of how this process went in these other towns. Each one of these towns used a screening committee, as we did, and held initial interviews in executive session. Then it got, I would say between 5 and 10 got kicked to the selectmen. Acton, I believe it was only 2 got 2 finalists to the selectmen. And the selectmen then interviewed all the candidates on one day. A lot of uniformity in how much time they allocated to the interviews, between 45 minutes and an hour, a little bit of time in between. Obviously, the finalist interviews are in public. No particular steps taken to enhance public participation. No one, all questioning was done by the selectmen. No one opened questions to the floor. I got warned off of that by several officials. He said he didn't mind it if I said this. The town administrator in Boxborough interviewed in a different town where they did that, and he said it was a nightmare. Questions were not so much questions as statements about people's qualifications or lack thereof. And he and others wound up withdrawing after that. A couple of people reminded me that you are still recruiting through the interview process. So in many ways, you're trying to put your best foot forward, as are the candidates. Courtney, did you have a chance to talk to any towns? Anything you want to add to that?
I talked to two towns. As we discussed, I spoke with the new town administrator in Charlton and the new town administrator in West Boylston. Interestingly, in West Boylston, the woman who is now town administrator has been acting. She was first an assistant. She started in other areas of their town government and has been in town government in that town for a long time. So she really wasn't new, and the process was, I mean, the questions, they just couldn't ask her much about the process because she was essentially begged to take the role and refused for a period of time and finally agreed. And so what struck me though about my conversation with her was how inspired she was with her work. And I would say that that's also struck me at one time or another speaking with Mr. Wrigley. And I just think it's useful to note that sometimes folks are lucky to love what they do, and I think it would be delightful to have another town administrator who seems to love very much what the position offers, even though it seems to be very hard work and lots of it. So in Charlton, a couple of things that I got from the town administrator there. I asked him a bit about the onboarding process, and he didn't get any particular guidance from the Board of Selectmen there. Basically, kind of said they told him when the first meeting was and gave him a packet. But luckily, and so he, I believe, started in December. And luckily, his approach is to kind of go around and see the lay of the land a little. And so he met with people. He checked in with some local businesses and went and met department heads and the like. And that was useful because actually now it's harder for him to see people in person, of course, and work directly with people. It's so much is done electronically at the moment. And so his other comment, particular comment was that communication is key and to err on the side of communication always. And that he really likes to touch base on a weekly basis, just to really just be in touch with what's going on around. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what I've got to add.
Okay. So based on what we heard, and I'm pleased to see that Justine St. John is with us. She's a selectman in Maynard, and I spoke to her about this, and so she can add anything if she wants. I've got a proposal for the board, but this is, I think, the main thing we want to talk about on this subject is what we're doing going forward. I'm going to propose that we interview all 4 candidates on the same day, allocate an hour to each interview, 15 minutes in between. Do it on a Saturday. I'm as thrilled about spending a beautiful Saturday in the summer with you as you are spending it with me, but it's probably the best thing to do. I think do it at the, I'm trying to fold in, take into consideration the whole coronavirus thing. Do it at the big room in Pompo. We can get some people in there. It's going to be early June, so things are going to be, in theory, opening up. We can get some people in there, but have some room to do social distancing, at least to some extent. But of course, also have it on Zoom, probably in that webinar function. And of course, televised by Stow TV. The selectmen, and I would suggest the town administrator, ask questions. Mr. Ryan drafted up a list of suggested questions that he passed around today. And we can talk about those if you'd like. They're just suggestions. One of the towns, I can't remember which, had the selectmen go in order. So one person asks a question, then the next person, then the next person. It avoids anyone dominating. Everybody gets an equal chance, and it's just more orderly. I think that's a good idea. And here's the part where that I admit I'm sort of freestyling. I feel the need for some level of public participation. I guess motivated in part by what we went through by the police chief's situation, but not entirely. But I agree with all the warnings that I got that opening it up to the floor is dangerous and certainly not a recruitment tool. What I'm thinking about doing is we invite the public on the website tomorrow to submit questions to me. And then I go through them and use the ones that are appropriate and not repetitive. And I will say, this is a question from a resident. I would like to incorporate public participation to that extent. I'm also thinking, and you might think this is weird, I want to situate the room so that the camera and the public are looking not full face at the candidate. I don't want them looking at us. They know what we look like. They don't need to see us. I think they want to see the faces of the candidates. I have been told it's intimidating to have the candidates facing the audience. I can understand that. So I'm thinking maybe a kind of a 45-degree angle. The candidate have to look this way to see the audience, but the audience can at least see the side of their face, and they're not looking at us the whole time. That's my proposal. Oh, and I'm thinking about doing this probably June 6th. I know at least one selectman has travel plans on the 13th. That's a Saturday. I hope it's a Saturday. What does everybody think of that? I see Mr. Burke's box. This is like Hollywood Squares. Mr. Burke's box is highlighted. Mr. Burke, you have something to say?
I didn't mean to highlight,
Sorry.
but I would say that I agree with the chair. If we have two cameras for this very important event, we can switch back and forth while the candidates look to us and then to the members of the community. I also think that if anyone has their thoughts that they'd like to offer, they can do that not in a public forum, but they can do that by email to the board.
Right. I would like to put a if we do this, if the board wants to do this, I would like to put a solicitation on the website tomorrow. And if the board wants to do this, I would hope, is Ann still with us? Yes, she is. I would hope that the Independent would sort of highlight the fact that we're soliciting questions. Ms. Fraser, what do you think of all this?
I am in agreement. I think the Independent can allow that we're accepting questions, not soliciting them, but willing to hear, to take input. And I think it's a nice idea to have the candidates facing us and be in profile to the audience so that there's the opportunity for everybody to see everybody in a more open forum sort of a way. And I'm happy to do it on June 6th, or pretty happy anyway. I'm looking forward to meeting these people. I think it's going to be exciting.
That's true. Mr. Ryan, what do you think?
I'm in agreement with it. I think Courtney made a very fine point. We're not soliciting questions, we're accepting questions. You know, we don't want 200 people to just send in random questions, but if people have valid things, which is why you're going to screen through them to make sure some of them, they're not repetitive, but we're willing to, we want to take input, but we're not necessarily soliciting everybody to send in their favorite question.
Well, Tom, you and Jim have come up with an excellent list of questions already. I think that the candidates will be busy answering those, and I don't feel like you left much unsaid.
Yeah, and That's it. I just think you made a good point that, you know, while we're willing to accept input, you know, we don't want people to feel obligated to send in something.
The distinction between soliciting and accepting is a little subtle for me, and I'm a lawyer, but
Actually, I think it's a good distinction.
oh, I guess I just don't get it. I think that our town administrator wants to add something to
The
this.
only thing I would add, I think the approach and the process is valid, and will elicit the right responses. My primary interest will be in the questions themselves. Now, I haven't seen what Tom put together, but I'm most interested in some technical questions. In other words, that list that Ross and the committee came up with, you know, financial, fiscal, budgeting, unions, you go down. I think we want to know what they know about these matters. And so I'm not saying all the questions, but I think we need, and if what you're proposing is the same question to every person, then I think it becomes even more important to have.
So that's a good point. I personally am not a believer in everyone must be asked exactly the same question. I especially for a high level position like this, I don't necessarily think I think it's good to freestyle a little bit. Let me solicit a little bit of outside comment and outside the board. I mean, the town administrator of Sterling looked like he had something to add here.
Well, I was talking about your camera placement.
Okay.
I think it's awkward to be answering a question and looking at the camera. So I would suggest the camera sort of be either behind you, so like it is here, or in front of you, but the candidate is talking to you and talking to the camera.
So you're suggesting
Trying to be.
So you're suggesting something more like the typical format with the selectmen facing the audience, but that there's a camera position to capture the facial expressions of the candidate.
And the candidate can be answering your question looking at the selectman,
Okay.
and by default is looking at the camera.
The only flaw in that, and I just want to say I appreciate it. I did not expect my strange 45-degree suggestion to be accepted, so I'm glad somebody voiced some opposition. My only problem with that was I wanted people in the audience to be able to see, but in the new normal here, there aren't going to be that many people in the audience.
I bet you Stow TV could set up a monitor so that as they're taping, the audience could see the. I mean, I think there's one. There used to be one in our selectmen's room in the corner.
Jonathan, are you listening to all this, and does any of this sound possible? Pompo, big room in Pompo.
Isn't there a motion?
Although maybe it'd be better to do it here, since we already have the cameras set up to face the candidates live and recorded and then run over a few days.
And can you, Jonathan, could you position a monitor that would show the audience in our typical selectmen's room what you're filming so that they could see the face of the candidate while the candidate faces us?
Yeah, we can just face it for the audience.
Okay.
It's not a very big monitor.
But it's
okay.
Not a huge room.
Not a very big room.
Let me take advantage of the fact that I have a selectman from Maynard here. Justine, you have anything to add to this whole discussion?
Thank you. No, actually, I
Could
think
Could we use the fancy room you guys have? I mean, maybe we could.
Oh, geez.
I mean, you guys are set up for. You've got gigantic monitors.
we're not even using that room right now. So,
oh, all right.
Sadly. No, I think everything that you're saying, I think sounds great. I think that the process sounds very well thought out. It does incorporate some public participation in the form of these questions. And I think that Stow TV does an amazing job with getting the word out, especially afterwards. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for people to watch this afterwards. So it sounds like you've covered a lot of your bases.
I think we've covered enough bases for now to at least start the process. There's a question.
Thank you, Justine. Appreciate your input, and maybe someday our chair will run for Maynard Selectman. But I have two process and very brief process questions. Are we going to show the candidates the questions ahead of time, and will we have a scoring sheet?
Scoring sheet's a very good question. We'll have to develop that. Show them the questions ahead. No, I don't think so. Does anybody want to do that? Anybody on the board want to do that?
Not particularly. As a matter of fact, I'd probably ask them not to watch their predecessors.
Yeah.
Well, we just ask them not to. If they do, they do. But
yeah.
When we've done other interviews in the past, we've asked that. So.
All right.
What about showing them the questions ahead of time? I think you might just get a different sort of answer. I mean, there's. I feel like you guys are. It's going to be a fairly thorough grilling, and I don't mean that unkindly, and I don't mean it in any of the wrong ways, but.
We're not going to get through every question. If we go in order for an hour, we're going to cover 15 questions tops.
Yeah.
Allison wants to.
We've allotted an hour for each interview, and we allowed a half hour in between, and it cut it close on some of them. It might have gone over a little hour, and then we wanted to talk before the next candidate. So I think allowing 15 minutes isn't enough.
It's exhausting to interview a candidate. By the time you get to your third, you're going to be tired.
Yep.
So I would suggest 2 in the morning, and then have lunch, and then 2 in the afternoon to have a chance to give yourself some break, because you start to figure, did I ask this question already? Or was that the previous candidate? So I think Allison's right. Give yourself some time.
Okay.
Yeah, 15 minutes just seemed too short between them. And we had them waiting to come in.
Yep.
Okay. Let me, I do kind of want to move on here, but I want to open it up to anybody else who has comments on this whole thing. By the way, unfortunate, the schedule being the way it is, and the election was supposed to happen before interviews, before the selection. Now the election is a month. We're going to have to try to get this done by the election, or else we risk having different selectmen doing the picking than we have doing the interviews, which I don't know if that's illegal, but it's certainly inadvisable. We seem to have plenty of time to do that, but I just want to mention that. That's another curveball thrown at us from the coronavirus. Any questions from members of the public? Questions, comments, suggestions? Linda?
Sorry. I was just going to comment. I know you're concerned about having candidates for the selectmen, that if you got too close to the election, you didn't have it. But all of this is on Stow TV and on YouTube, so they could catch up in those public meetings of hearing those candidate questions and any of the interviews.
Right. So if for some reason it spills over, it's not the end of the world.
Correct. That's my only comment.
I just don't want, I don't want to say, I wasn't part of the, I didn't get a chance to ask questions. Let's start over again. So any other questions?
They would probably submit your questions to you.
Any other questions, comments? All right.
I'm looking forward to June 6th with
I'm
bated
sure you
breath.
are. I am too. Actually, I am, for the same reasons Courtney said. So I think we have a consensus on the basic process. June 6th, all 4 candidates. I like the idea of 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, probably a half hour in between. The 4 selectmen plus the town administrator asking questions in order, probably alphabetical order. We'll do it here, not at Pompo. Stow TV will have cameras set up that they can look at us, and there'll be a camera trained on the candidate and a monitor for anybody who happens to be here. We will also post something as early as tomorrow. I will write something up very quickly. We'll post it on the Selectmen's page and on the Selectmen's page on the website and on the homepage. Soliciting or accepting, folks?
Accepting.
Accepting.
What?
Accepting.
Accepting questions from members of the public for us to consider asking. And I think that's it.
I have one more question or
Yes,
comment.
Tricia.
I watched a bit of an interview process in one of the towns that I was looking at about all this, and it appeared that they were going to actually, so of course they were ranking as they were going through the interviews, but I got the sense they might have just tallied up the ranking sheets and made their decision that day, not specifically saying one way or the other that I think that's necessary or...
So I'm glad you raised that. One of the towns I spoke to did that as well, but they only had 2 candidates.
Yeah.
By that point, somebody had dropped out, and they made the decision that day. I'm going to assume that we're not going to do that because I think we're going to be tired. And we have a meeting only 3 days later, a regular scheduled meeting only 3 days later on June 9th. I'm assuming the actual selection will occur then. Of course, there's always possibility that one or more selectmen may want to call back fewer than 4, and that the board would vote to do that, and we have the time to do that, even if we had to go to the 20th. None of the towns I spoke to did that. They did all the interviews in one day, and that was it. No callbacks. I'm glad you raised that. So I'm assuming, unless we are inspired that day, that we're going to be making the selection on a regularly scheduled meeting after the 6th.
Sounds great.
Yep. One comment, Jim?
Yes.
Is, you know, while we may not be under quite the same rules as we are now, I would imagine we're probably still going to want to be, I'll say, socially distancing, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say that the public, as you mentioned, were accepting questions, but probably no public at the actual meeting, because if you let 5 in, you've got to let 10 in, and you got to let 15 in.
I don't think we have to. I've got 5 here right now, not including Bill and I. I think we could limit it to that pretty easily. Everyone seems relatively comfortable.
Oh, I'm talking about you're going to have, I'm assuming that I'm going to be there in person.
Well, yeah.
So you'll have 4 selectmen.
Good point.
Probably Maureen, Bill, the candidate. We're pushing a gathering of 10 at that point.
You're right. You're right.
And
And thanks for bringing that up. One of the most important things I meant to mention, I forgot, is that I'm kind of assuming that all the selectmen will be here physically. If anyone's uncomfortable with that, that's fine. We can make other arrangements. You can do it by Zoom. That's possible. And I'm assuming that the candidates will be here physically. My understanding is that they did appear physically for the initial interviews.
Yeah.
And I'm getting nods from the screening committee.
Three Zooms and 3.
Well, the 4 that we're presenting,
Oh yeah.
all were in person.
The 4 finalists all were in person. So selectmen, presumptions that you're going to be here, but if you're not comfortable with that, that's fine. We can make do.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. But, I'm just thinking of trying to keep trying to make sure that there's plenty of space and so on.
You're right.
And if you tell people that they can come down and do it in person, who are you going to exclude and who aren't you?
Well, you're right. We're already going to have 6 people in this relatively small room. So,
Yep.
Okay.
You know, that might be a reason why we want to have it at Pompo. Just throwing that out there. This is a very important decision for the town. I don't think people need to ask questions.
Jonathan, can you set up a camera facing the candidate and a monitor facing the audience at Pompo, the big room at Pompo? And be live?
And do Zoom.
And do Zoom? No, I don't think.
No.
I don't think we want to do that. People are used to watching us on TV. Considering the number of people who are going to be here, we may not be able to have any audience whatsoever. Yeah, it's against this small room we're in right now. We won't be able to have any audience whatsoever. I think in groups of less than 10 we can be okay. But 6 will be the members of the board, the town administrator, and the candidate. Pompo's bigger. If you can't do it, you can't do it. All right.
Is there a reason why we can't do it live on YouTube? I know it's out of the ordinary, but
we're going to do it live on Zoom, right?
It's going to be live on Zoom. All right, we need to make a decision. We need to move on. So it sounds like we're stuck here if we want to. And the physical audience probably isn't that important. People aren't that used to doing it. They're used to not being in the actual audience. So if there's any time to do it this way, this would be the time to do it. Bill.
Even at Pompo, what are you going to get? Maybe 20?
Not even.
I mean, if you look at the numbers we're talking about here, I wouldn't sacrifice the good for the perfect.
No, I kind of agree with that. We're not. At Pompo, you're limited by the number of chairs. There actually aren't that many chairs there. So at the most,
we could get 100 chairs in there.
Let's not do that.
Right.
Let's not.
And then I'll stay home.
All right. All right. We have to move on. So I think we have a tentative solution, as I've outlined. Have members of the board had a chance to take a look at the questions that Mr. Ryan passed around?
Yes, they're excellent.
yeah, they are. And I would like a chance to go over them once again. But yeah, they covered all the points.
So I think what we need to do here, consistent with the open meeting law, we have to send a copy to the town administrator anyway. Any last minute comments you've got, any edits, send them to the town administrator.
Exactly.
And Maureen, and he can tweak it. And I want him to add some questions along the technical lines that he was talking about anyway. I want to mention very briefly, first of all, thank you to everybody for that fairly organized and efficient discussion. On the subject of onboarding, I put it on the agenda just in case we want to talk about it. As Ms. Frazier indicated, everybody I spoke to as well indicated the selectmen didn't do anything in particular before their town administrator started by way of onboarding. They did not, and this is what I really want to know, they did not have a month of meetings laid out for the new town administrator to go to. And I'm getting an enthusiastic shake of the head from the town administrator in Sterling that that's a bad idea. What I do think we could do is solicit, or perhaps is accept, from every department head a very brief memo of no more than 2 pages describing what their department does, how many staff they have, roughly what their budget is, what the current challenges are, and then appending no more than 8 additional pages. That way, and then put them all in a binder. And I know, a very 80s solution, binder, but it works. That way we have, for each department, no more than 10 pages that the town administrator can flip through, the new town manager can flip through and get a real brief thumbnail sketch. And that can be on this person's desk the first day. Ross, you want to add something to
Can
that?
you maybe modify that? Because every candidate we have knows what town clerk's office does, the assessor's office does,
Yeah.
the board of health. So maybe have the board and committees list what they do that's out of the norm.
Okay,
Because I guarantee you these folks know what department heads normally do. It's the oddball things that might be of interest.
right. That's a good idea.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said. On the other hand, if a department wants to bring something to the attention of the new town administrator, they could put something together in just a page.
We're not going to edit this, we're just going to give them guidelines, no more than 2 pages. Try to highlight, if you're the treasurer's office, no need to say, we get the money and invest it.
Yeah, no, I understand. But if they've got challenges that they want to bring to the attention of the new town administrator, and that can be on his desk or her desk when she takes over. And it would be nice to be able to introduce the new town administrator at town meeting.
Which we possibly can do, given the new schedule. All right. Well, thank you. Anybody have any last words on the town administrator selection process?
Yeah, just on the onboarding stuff.
Yep.
As you said, an introduction, but I would say, list the names of all the people in the department, or at least how many people are in there, right? At least full-timers. The fire department may be difficult, but, with all the call firefighters, but at least all the full-time staff, so that they have some idea of who they might be dealing with when they run into them. If they remember the names. Just a thought.
All right, we need to move on. We have an executive session at the end of the evening, and I had estimated for town council that it would be 8:30 or so. So I want to get moving. Thank you, everyone, for this discussion. Town Administrator Screening Committee, thank you very much for all your hard work. Really very, very well done. And I think we're going to hold off on any discussion about the process for hiring the new permanent police chief until the town administrator's report, since he's got some suggestions on that. And we're going to move on then to our discussion about the town building reopening plans. And I have the facilities department or the building department with us tonight. Both. Gentlemen, the governor announced his recent, is it 3-phase or 4-phase? 3-phase? 4-phase plan, and we are on the cusp.
Another one today.
We are on the cusp of it. And can you summarize? I do view this as primarily operational, not policy. So I don't know how much of a role we have in it. But the policy is probably let's have a healthy and responsible reopening. But can you summarize for us what the plans are for the reopening of the building?
Sure. So under that phase 1, the governor's plan, we're looking at opening the building, this building. We're not talking about Pompo or the library or the other public safety building, but opening this building up on June 1st to accommodate appointments only. We'll keep the building locked, but the departments will be able to, public will be able to call in, make appointments.
Hold on, Craig. Can Selectmen hear Mr. Martin?
Just barely.
Maybe, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
It's fogging up my glasses anyway.
All right. Record, Craig Martin, building inspector.
6 feet away, you can sit in that chair.
Go ahead. Just project a little bit more.
So to recap, we're talking about opening the building June 1st on a limited basis with appointments only. The front door will be locked. and the departments can take calls from the public, make appointments. The public can hold their meetings. We encourage just electronic transfer of material if possible, but if it does demand some kind of a meeting or access of information, then they can come in. All the precautions will be in place. We've already ordered the sneeze petitions, sneeze guards for all the offices. Some of them are already fit out with, on the first floor with protection for the ladies downstairs, so those will all be in place. Sanitizer, the social distancing, all the things that we've been all talking about for 2 months. The elevator is back in operation, so that is a good thing in the building to get people. We'll be limited to one person in the elevator, one floor. As we move along, we'll be daily cleaning the building, and we're going to try to have the departments work within 25% of their staff, 25 to 50% of their staff, which generally is 1 or 2 people in the department.
You're leaving that up to each department head.
Yes, and
each department.
And the background is it's all based on occupancies for the offices, and so I've done some calculations on that, and I think we all fit within the percentages that the government requested. So the Board of Health has indicated they can take temperatures daily, necessary of the employees, just as a check.
Okay.
We want to do that. And then I'll take all this and roll it into a COVID-19 operational plan, which we can finish this up. If this is acceptable to the selectmen, we can finish that plan up this week. Get it to the employees. We've already had 1 meeting with all the employees to get their input. We'll get this plan put together, get it to the employees, and continue to focus on June 1st. That would be phase 1. We would get into phase 1 for approximately 3 weeks, thereabouts, to see how things go, and if things are working well.
I don't think you mentioned masks. I assume everyone has to wear a mask.
Yes, it'd be mandatory. We're all wearing them now in the building, in the hallways and so forth. And then anyone that comes into the building would be required to have a mask on.
And no service if you don't have a mask. The Russell's rule.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way we're...
Works over there.
Yeah, exactly. So we'd be doing that. And so if it goes well for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it happens to be, then we look for phase 2, which would be opening the building, unlocking the door, and allowing the public to come in and conduct business basically in the same fashion, but with the public in the building. So, again, this is only referencing this building. Allison is getting guidance from the her Elders Council, Massachusetts.
Yeah, Executive Office of Elder Affairs.
Executive Office of Elder Affairs. The library is getting their direction from the trustees plus an overseer that they kind of all talk to in the library business. So the library is thinking of opening for drop-off and pickup on June 25th. So they're not ready to open yet, but I just thought I would mention that as far as the library is concerned.
I'm going to want to come back to you.
So that's the basic plan. We'll see how things go after phase 1, if that's acceptable, and look to do phase 2 and then follow it.
So you're going to have one way. I mean, you've got 2 staircases. I'm assuming one's going to be up, one's going to be down.
We've got them labeled right now.
Oh.
I have everybody go one way on the stairway so you don't get people bumping into one another.
Well, it was labeled. Yes, you're right.
And we're going to try to stagger, in this first phase, we're going to try to stagger the appointments as best we can between floors. So we don't have everyone on the first floor opening up for appointments on the same day. So I'll work that out. I mean, 3rd floor, 2nd floor, and 1st floor.
Questions from members of the board?
One of the things that this kind of brings up, I suppose, especially where Greg is saying that the library isn't even thinking of opening up for pickup and drop off till the 25th. How are we going to make town meeting work?
So different subject.
But it's kind of along with this.
Technically not within Craig's jurisdiction. It's in the moderators. I'm going to take what you just asked as an indication that you want to have the moderator on the agenda on June 9th to talk about this. I've exchanged a couple of emails with him about this. His thoughts are fluid. He was thinking about, he's in charge of this. What he says goes. He was thinking about something outside, but recognized that that's risky. And he was thinking about taking advantage of all the rooms at Hale, as we do for really well-attended town meetings. Let's put him on the agenda for June 9th. For right now, let's focus on the opening of this building.
Yep, I agree with you. I just wanted to bring it up so that I expect he may need some help getting things set up. So
let's put him on the agenda for.
Great suggestion.
Okay.
Only got some costs.
Okay.
Got the same dilemma.
Okay. Other questions from other members of the board? Seeing and hearing none. Any questions from members of the public?
Craig, did you mention in the meeting about public restrooms versus staff restrooms in the building?
Oh, right.
I didn't touch on that, but we're gonna make the first floor restroom, the men's room, the ladies' room, that's gonna be accessible to the public. And then the staff in the building can use the lower level. We have 2 bathrooms at the lower level and 1 at the third floor. And those will be for employees in the building.
Linda, your electronic hand is up, but it's been up for a while. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I was muted. I just wanted to know if the building department is putting any thought to reopening Pompo. Or is that not on the agenda?
Not at this time.
Not on the agenda at this time, though I'm about to ask Ms. Toole about how complicated it must be to open a council on aging. And I have a hand up from Karen Kelleher.
Yes, Jim. I just want to weigh in on opening the town building. I personally think it's premature, seeing as though other businesses are opening up right now. I fear that there might be a resurgence of cases that come up. I would rather see you wait a few weeks to see how things go. And is there a plan to step up custodial services to keep the building clean?
Can you address the custodial services thing?
But we have daily cleaning in the building by our custodian, Jeff Harrell. Every day we do cleaning. That's all the common areas throughout the building and in the offices.
Is Sterling Municipal Building opening? When are you opening?
To be determined.
To be
That's why I'm
determined.
taking notes to see how your team is doing.
Okay. glad we can help.
I'm worried about town meeting.
Yeah. All right. Let's.
Well, while I understand what Karen's saying, I think that the proposal by Craig right now, he's still looking at keeping the door locked, appointments only. It's not going to be a huge crowd in here every day the way it used to be. I think this opening it slowly makes sense.
I certainly think, if you waited, I wouldn't want to see us wait more than 2 weeks. Things are starting to reopen. My office at Downtown Crossing is reopening June 1 on a very similar basis. Downtown Crossing is a lot more crowded than, and they're being extremely cautious. Mr. Martin.
One of the provisions of the government's phase 1 was construction and startup under phase 1, and that relates to what we do in the building department, conservation, board of health, and other departments. So that's another one of the reasons
people need permits.
Proceeding for permits, yeah.
Hearings can't go forward. under the current environment, at least not hearings that started. That's just town council's advice. I don't know, it's tough. Other questions and comments?
I just wanted to comment along those lines that allowing most pressing matters to potentially begin to be addressed by creating the opportunity for folks to make appointments sounds like a great way to get a sense of what feels pressing for the public who would like to access, like to reconnect with processes that have perhaps been suspended. So it's just a gradual opportunity. And I guess my thought is, in light of Karen's comment, that perhaps the individual departments can discuss with any potential person requesting an appointment, discuss the urgency, so to speak, or the drive to, and where they are in the process, and prioritize things accordingly so that you can feel safe and make the flow be comfortable.
All right. Battery on this computer is running out.
Kathy's got her hand up.
Let's do it.
Kathy? That it certainly is.
I just want to add that I think all of the boards and departments are finding that they can get a tremendous amount done by way of serving the community via email, scanning things, leaving things for people to pick up, doing things over the phone. So I think, the message to the public can be, we're open for business. We're here to help you with whatever you need. The only limitation is on coming into the building kind of unfettered. And whether we're ready to kind of throw the doors open in phase 2 or not, I'm not sure. I think that depends on the governor's timing, and we see how it goes. But I did also just want to clarify, Jim, that I think all of the committees are currently holding public hearings right now. I know Conservation, Zoning Board of Appeals, Board of Health, Planning are all having hearings. So
Okay.
we are moving projects forward.
So I need to move forward on our agenda. I think what I'd like to do is to have this on our agenda again for June 9th, to revisit it. And in particular, Craig, one thing I learned, let's make some calls to our neighbors and find out what they're doing and what stage they're at. And, no need for us to be on the bleeding edge of anything. But let's see what they're doing and see if we're in the pack. Okay? All right. And
does that mean we are not opening on the 1st?
No, not at all.
So we'll have discussion on the 9th, but we'll be open on the 1st?
Yeah, and see how it's going.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're agreeing to your plan, and we'll revisit it on the 9th.
I mean, am I
going to advertise tomorrow? But
have I, sense of the board, I think, is that we basically agree with the plan, but we want to see how it's going. Is that true?
That's my view of reality. It's not going to be, for the next few weeks, it's not going to be changing much from where it is now. It's other than there might be a few more people allowed in. The door's going to be locked until phase 2, which is at least, I believe, 2 to 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, but I want to see stuff like, how are residents reacting to the wear masks rule? Are we getting some trouble from that? Are they paying attention to the one way up these stairs and down the other? I want to see how it's actually functionally going. And, like the governor says, this is all subject to being revisited and even walking it back and modifying it. Right. I really do need to move on. I have a gigantic agenda and I'm behind. Thank you, everyone, for this discussion. Appreciate it. You look like you're getting ready to go. Oh, I did want to hear Allison in general, in a minute, if you can, What is your plan? It must be a real challenge.
Well, so we're still operating as usual. Staff come in, we're meeting the needs of the seniors, just contact free. They need durable medical equipment. We serve our meals.
You're doing activities.
The luncheon. We just, a lot of our exercise classes are on Zoom live, and we're helping elders with the technology to get on. They're on Stow TV, they're on YouTube. They can get food, they can do, the vans are running and taking people. We just have one passenger at a time, we're wiping down. So we're operating. But again, we're talking with all the other COAs, and we're not going to have like Stow opens first, and then people from all other towns come to Stow COA. We're all going to be on the same page and open at the same time.
Okay.
But the challenging part of the group activities, that'll be a long ways away, because community centers are to bring people together.
Right.
So we're going to have a slow opening with locked by appointment only. But we're fulfilling their needs, contact free. They call, they need masks, we have masks, we put them outside the door with their name on it.
Mr. Burke has made that clear. He's but still, it must be a challenge to
It is,
think
and
about reopening.
we're delivering cheer packages to the elders. We're calling them. The outreach is very busy every day, calling elders to check in, see if they need anything. So we're doing a lot more outreach, and the van drivers taking people in the post office banks.
Thank you for that update. Appreciate it. Thank you all for your input on all this. And let us move on. Next, we have a discussion vote authorizing a cable commission to hold the LACAC to hold Comcast license renewal public hearing on June 4th.
Mr. Chair, point of procedure. Maybe I can speed this along.
Please.
Can't LACAC just decide to hold the public forum itself? Do they need us to authorize it?
My understanding from the materials, although it was kind of implicit, is that since we are the franchising authority, technically we have to hold the hearing, but we can delegate it. Jonathan, is that a fair statement? So what we're here to consider is whether to delegate it. And I'm certainly in favor of delegating this, considering everything else we have to do right now. By the way, I appreciated the very detailed memo from Mr. Solomon, your lawyer, on this.
I am. Thank you. If you can hear me.
Hello, Mr. Solomon. Thank you very much
Hello.
for the detailed memo. That answered a lot of
Thank
questions.
you. Great.
Did I basically summarize that correctly? We're basically trying to decide whether to delegate the power to hold the hearing.
That's right, and it's done very commonly. A hearing, even at this time, could take some time. Your time, as tonight shows, is busy with a lot of other things. No one's better than your committee, I think, to handle that. It's really the first step to hear from the public, and I think they're most appropriately suited to have that initial hearing, to hear from the public with respect to what the cable needs of the community are and how the current company is doing under its current license. So it's a perfect fit. And you have a strong committee, as I found out already.
Does any selectman feel ready to make a motion?
I'd like to hear what Brian has to say.
Brian, what do you have to say?
I was on the LACAC committee meeting when this was discussed last Thursday. It wasn't clear to me from that meeting that the Board of Selectmen had to take an action, but if that's the case, that's fine. The only thing that I would say with respect to the draft motion is that it indicates that June 4th hearing is going to be via Zoom. It's a very important meeting, and everyone in the town is encouraged to sign on to that Zoom meeting and explain to the authorities why cable television in Stow is so important and why we need it. It's actually self-evident from what's going on lately.
Right. And I should add, if I could, that it's not specifically required by the Federal Cable Act as to who has to have it, but under the state law, the Board of Selectmen is the issuing authority. So just to be cautious procedurally, what I do is I have the Board of Selectmen so delegate specifically for that purpose. I don't think it would be legally incorrect to do it otherwise, but it's just a cautious way to approach it. And it's also a good way for the committee to initially connect with the selectmen on where they are.
All right, Counselor, thank you. Mr. Chair, will you take a motion?
Please.
Just to speed it up, I would just refer to the draft motion that's in the packet materials and just add the word via Zoom when it says hold an ascertainment hearing via Zoom. And it's going to be on June 4th. I hope my neighbors and residents will be able to attend, because this is an important step in the process to getting Stow what it needs in the way of cable TV equipment, upgrades, and just general bringing the community together through this electronic means. Yes. Thank you for reminding me, Jonathan.
Are you okay with the amendment that it be via Zoom?
Yeah, certainly, yes.
All right, so
Thank you
I have a
for that.
second for that, for Brian's motion.
I'll second Brian's motion.
So a motion has been made and seconded for the Board of Selectmen to request and authorize LACAC, the Local Access Channel Advisory Committee, to hold an ascertainment hearing regarding the cable license renewal of Comcast. The purpose of the hearing is to review the performance of the cable television operator and to hear testimony regarding future cable-related community needs and interests. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call vote. Ms. Frisha. You're muted, Courtney.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Burke.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you guys for doing this. Appreciate it. All right, now the annual renewal of the intermunicipal contract for animal control services. We share an animal control officer with the town of Foxborough, and we have a contract covering that. And my understanding is that the contract is substantively the same as it has been for the past several years. Mr. Town Administrator, do you want to add anything to that?
I do not. The services being provided in Littleton's part of this,
Oh, Littleton as well, okay.
and we're splitting it equal thirds. The level of services, according to the Board of Health and the Police Department, are more than adequate, so there's no reason not to, and it falls within the budget that I submitted, so.
Mr. Chair, this agreement has worked out well in the past. The materials are complete. I move that we accept the intermunicipal agreement with the, and I don't know if this is possible, with the understanding that only the chair needs sign it.
That is a very good point, considering current difficulties. So I'm taking Mr. Burke's motion as to approve it and have the chair sign on behalf of the board and the town administrator sign the intermunicipal agreement with the town of Boxborough for animal control services for the period of July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome to it. I have a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, as I just stated, which would, as Mr. Burke said, authorize me to sign on behalf of the board. Further discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms.
I
Frisha.
have a question. In the contract, the town hall in Stow is stated to be at 37 Shattuck Street, which I understand from Google is in Littleton. And I think that is unclear. So my question is that intended? And if so, is there a way it could be clarified?
What page is? Yeah, you're right. So,
it's mentioned in more than one place.
Mr. Burke, do you have do you accept a friendly amendment that the contract be approved with the address for Town Hall in Stowe being amended to accurately reflect 380 Great Road.
Yes, and I appreciate my colleague Ms. Fraser's pointing that out.
Yep. Thank you.
Please find more than one instance and replace it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll strike it in each case an initial.
Thank you.
Very good. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call vote. Ms. Fraser.
Aye.
Sorry, did
No,
you
I
have
was just going to bring it to
Oh,
Maureen's
okay.
attention to go through
Yeah.
and identify, and then we can strike an initial.
Okay. Mr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Burke?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone. Now our annual appointments, part of our annual appointments, for several positions. Do I have a motion, and then we'll do discussion, if any?
I'll make a motion on the recommendation of the building. Which one are we doing? Forest Fire Warden. I move to reappoint Fire Chief Joseph Landry to the position of Forest Fire Warden for a 1-year term ending May 31, 2021.
Second. Oh, sorry. Is it Forest Fire Warden or just Forest Warden?
Forest Warden.
Forest Warden.
My apologies.
Motion is made and seconded to appoint Fire Chief Joe Landry as the Forest Warden for a 1-year term ending May 31, 2021. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, well, roll call. Ms. Fraser.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Burke.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Ryan, do you have another motion?
I move to reappoint Craig Martin to the position of Building Commissioner for a 1-year term ending May 31, 2021.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to reappoint Craig Martin to the position of Building Commissioner for a 1-year term ending May 31, 2021. Further discussion?
With the understanding he's not going to be there for the full year.
Yeah, but he needs the appointment, so.
I understand.
Right. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Roll call vote. Ms. Fraser.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Burke.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Ryan.
On the recommendation of the Building Commissioner, Craig Martin, I move to reappoint the following inspectors for 1-year terms ending May 31, 2021. Assistant Facilities Manager / Local Inspector, Douglas Hyde. Electrical Inspector, Robert W. Norton. Deputy Electrical Inspector, Charles Weeks. Deputy Electrical Inspector, Michael A. Norton. Gas Inspector, Adam Solberg. Deputy Gas Inspector, Robert Smith. Plumbing Inspector, Adam Solberg. Deputy Plumbing Inspector, Robert Smith.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to make, on the recommendation of the Building Commissioner, to make the appointments so specified. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Well, I'm sorry. Roll call. Ms. Fraser.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Burke.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Let's take up items 12 and 13 together, which is accepting the 2020 annual town meeting warrant, and I put on the agenda discussion vote 3 articles. I have to tell you, I personally am not ready to make any recommendations on articles, nor do I really think we have the time tonight. What I would like to do is make that one of the things we're going to do on June 9th, hopefully in addition to an appointment of a town administrator, a focus of our meeting. But in the meantime, I'm going to suggest that any selectmen who have articles that they want to discuss or make recommendations on, either yes or no, email them to me. And then what I can do is be very specific on the agenda about what articles we will be discussing. That way all of us will know and the public will know.
As the chair pleases.
Well, it just seems kind of efficient. And I'm going to ask you, try to do that this week. Well, when is actually June 9th? I have a few weeks. we have to post by the 5th. Yeah, so try to do that this week. Try to take a look through the warrant. You know, those of us who were at the FinCom public hearing, I feel like I've been through it in some detail, thanks to that. But take a look at it and see which ones you want to discuss for a recommendation, yay or nay. Keep in mind, please, and this is a reminder, I guess, primarily to Ms. Fraser, who has been on the board that long, we don't need to make recommendations on anything. We're not like the Finance Committee, which needs to make recommendations. We typically do make a recommendation at least on the budget, but then we make recommendations just on other articles as the selectmen see fit to make recommendations on.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we need to discuss the warrant itself, and I have to admit, I have not proofed this like I usually do.
I've read through it. I didn't see any fatal flaws.
I was just about to say, I'm hoping that Eagle Eye Ryan took a look at it.
I got one.
You got one. Good.
On page 8, it states that Monday, the 22nd day of June is, or I think it says Monday, the 27th day of June, and it needs to be the 22nd for the day of the town meeting. It's like,
which page?
I mean, June.
8.
Which page?
Yeah, June. Page 8.
Page 8 on mine is the wage and salary articles.
Yeah, same on mine.
Sorry. Let me, oh dear. Trouble with making notes ahead of time.
Courtney, just try to coordinate with Maureen. From what Maureen is saying here, it sounds like she may have already caught that.
Great.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to slow things up, but now this is germane. The warrant reads that the annual town meeting is going to be held at the Hale Middle School auditorium.
Yeah.
Well, right now, that's our understanding.
What happens if it has to be changed at the last minute? Well, I suppose we can deal with that when it comes up.
I think we'll say, Maureen, please reach out to the moderator and make sure we can go with that. But I think that's what he's planning on doing.
That's what I thought too, but I just wanted to bring that to the attention. It is germane to talk about it in connection.
It's important to note that he's going to include the cafeteria and the gymnasium.
Right.
No, I understand.
Hey, could we take out, once again, esteemed administrative assistant from the end of the finance? Oh, I guess this is just leftover from last year. This isn't really part of their report, so that's fine. Never mind.
And the only other point I'd like to ask is, can we authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the board?
To sign
the warrant. Don't we have to sign the warrant?
I think we should all sign the warrant. That's a statutory thing.
If that's the case, then I'll call and make an appointment.
And it's Courtney's point was on page 7. It says 27. It should be 20. You already got it. She already got it, Courtney.
Thank you. Great.
Anything else? Seeing and hearing nothing, do I have a motion to accept the warrant?
So moved.
Or not accept it? We can just, dispose of the entire issue of where to have town meeting. Motion has been made and seconded to accept the 2020 annual town meeting warrant with the minor revisions suggested. Further discussion?
The only other thing that I think is going to have to be added to all this is the finance committee stuff, but
absolutely,
I think the basis of it is
right.
Typically, I ask that you add the language, understanding I need to make a final check. There may be some tweaks to finance committee. So as to form, that understanding, perfecting changes may have to be made.
Does everybody understand that? So the motion is to accept the 2020 annual town meeting warrant as to form with the possibility of perfecting changes. Bill has to go through it one more time.
That's my understanding.
Yep.
Okay. All right. No further discussion. A roll call vote due to the circumstances. Ms. Fraser.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Burke,
Aye, and I think the Finance Committee does have recommendations.
chair votes aye.
In fact, I know it does.
All right, very good. We are down to the town administrator's report, which will include some words about the search for a new police chief.
Just express some thoughts with regard to the approach of finding the next police chief for Stow. My own recommendation is to seek all qualified candidates, both by encouraging our in-house qualified candidates to apply, at the same time opening it up for qualified candidates that are interested across Massachusetts, or for that matter outside of Massachusetts. I also think that similar to what has just been accomplished with the subcommittee to find a town administrator, is to have a subcommittee appointed by and organized, created by the selectmen, and I'm offering either a 5-member subcommittee or a 7-member subcommittee. In both cases, there'd be selectmen representation. In the larger committee where there's 7, I'd recommend 2 selectmen, the TA, fire chief, highway superintendent, a current or retired police chief, and a resident. Under 5, I would reduce it to 1 selectman and not include the highway superintendent. I think the committee's charge would be to do similarly as has been done with the TA selection committee or search committee, to solicit qualified candidates, go through an evaluative process that essentially a due diligence process, to reduce it to a short list of 3 to 5 and make recommendations of ranked candidates to the full board for the completion of the hiring process. So it's very similar to what has just been accomplished with respect to providing the selectmen a short list of candidates, 4 in this case, for further interviews and selection by the town administrator. Just my thoughts, not full of details, but will set the framework. So,
Mr. Chair, may I ask the town administrator which size screening committee he recommends?
I don't have a strong recommendation. For efficiency purposes, 5, I found in my experience, is more efficient and effective. Get larger than that, it's somewhat, but to tell you the truth, including a resident, which I think will be important here, may entail going to 7, and including the highway superintendent.
I think it's important to include a resident, all things considered. I like that suggestion.
So a slight preference to 7, consisting of the positions that, and I think it'd be helpful for 2 selectmen to come to the full board. In the past, I've had 2 on my working groups when we've hired, obviously not a police chief necessarily, though that we had done that once in the past. I just think you're the appointing authority under the statute, and I just think it brings strength to the recommendation to have more than 1.
I kind of agree with that. I mean, Mr. Ryan will no doubt be one of them, but I think it's important to get another selectman on there too. You know, Tom's more familiar with everybody in the department than most of us are, although I feel like now I am too. It's good, I think, to get somebody with more of an outside perspective, somebody who maybe isn't quite as familiar with them.
I would tend to agree with you. I think 7 sounds like the right number to me.
Mr. Chair, I agree for what it's worth, but a point of procedure. I'm looking at the agenda. We're not going to be taking any action on this other than developing a consensus, I take it.
Well, we're gonna
Discussion process for hiring a new permanent police chief. Considering that we have time, maybe you're right. It doesn't say vote. So.
Sorry, who was right?
I think that's fine. But we seem to have.
I'm not getting it, Courtney, am I?
What'd you
take what you can get.
What do you think, Brian?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Oh, did you want me to note that you were right?
It's so rare.
Maureen, could
Sometimes.
you note in the minutes that at approximately 8:50 on May 26, 2020, Brian was right?
For a change.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to take the time. I look forward to the process moving forward.
A little levity is okay. Good. I think we sort of have a consensus on that. And, you know, I'm thinking that let's see how the accepting of questions from the public goes on the town administrator. Maybe we do the same thing with the police chief. And I'm glad Bill suggested having a resident on the interview committee for the police chief. All things considered, I think now's the time for that. All right. Anything else, Bill?
Not under that, but I did include comments with respect to the matter of going forward on completing the hiring process for the town administrator, and we discussed that. And then the rest are in executive session.
Liaison reports, keeping in mind that we have a executive session after this. I'll start with Mr. Burke.
I think I'm attending all my liaison appointments, CBA, Finance Committee. I didn't make the public forum, but I was for the 2.5 hours after the public forum to talk about the matters or the recommendations Finance Committee was going to be taking, LACAC, Council on Aging, but everybody's working very, very hard. That's all I can say and need to say.
Thank you. Mr. Ryan?
You kind of already went into the Memorial Day ceremony, but one of the things I wanted to do is a couple people that weren't actually mentioned. Matt Irvin, he ended up playing taps. He did a very nice job. And the other thing is that the color guard, I was very impressed with how professional they were. And I think they added a lot to the ceremony. And it consisted of Barry Evers, Judson Swiminer, Greg Silverio, and Keith Villa. And one important thing to note is that these guys gave up their time, got all dressed up, and came out, you know, for a 10-person ceremony on their own time. So I think they really should be commended. I've already sent a note to Chief Landry to give them my personal thanks, as well as thanks of the board for doing that. You know, they don't have to come out and do an honor guard at any time, but these guys are always willing to do it for the town, and they're very, very professional about it. So I just wanted to really give them a shout out.
Thank you, Tom.
I was there at an appropriate social distance, and everyone did a great job, including Mr. Ryan. And I expressed the board's appreciation to the Colonel and Mr. Zavorsky, or Sergeant Zavorsky.
Yep.
Thank you. Ms. Fraser.
Just a quick note on some Conservation Commission business. The Lake Boone Commission seems to be doing some interesting new. So there are two things. One is that you're aware, having read the warrant, that they're proposing a change in the rules on the lake to make our rules agree better with the state regulations, which I think is great. But also, it seems that they are, I believe they're going to apply for a grant and enter into a process of seeking a real answer to what the heavy nutrient levels in the lake are, if in fact that's the cause of the poor water quality. And you know, once those vectors are identified, or once the sources are identified, then a plan can be made appropriately. And I think that's really commendable, because so far it seems like it's been difficult to really get on top of the water quality. So that's my report. Things are going along. Community Preservation Committee, actually, I'll just say, is working primarily on the article with the Municipal Housing Trust to bring to town meeting. There's still work being done on the agreement between those two groups, and then also the Housing Trust is working on which contractor they'll use to administer the program that they are proposing if it is funded.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. I don't have any report. I just want to remind everybody you're going to email Bill any changes or comments on the questions that Tom sent you. You're going to do that as quickly as possible. And you're going to email me with warrant articles, numbers that you propose for discussion on the June 9th agenda. And you're going to do that by the end of the week. And with that, do I have a motion to convene an executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 38, Section 21A5 for matters related to a criminal investigation? We will not be returning to open session.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and second to go into executive session for the reasons stated. We will not be coming back into public session. This requires a roll call vote. Ms. Frecia?
Aye.
Mr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Burke?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Members of the board, you have the Zoom information for the executive session, and I will see you there. Thank you, everyone.